What is the legislative code of ethics? Well, California's Constitution in Article 4 that we know deals with the legislative branch of government. There are a number of sections that apply to the ethical conduct of legislators. And these provisions are found in sections 4 and 5 of Article 4 of the state constitution. Section 4 contains a prohibition on certain earned income and basically prohibits a member of the legislature from knowingly receiving any salary, wages, commissions, or other sorts of earned income from either a lobbyist or a lobbying firm, or from a person who during the previous 12 months had been under contract with the legislature. Any member who knowingly receives such compensation may not vote upon or make or participate in making in any way or attempting to use their official position to influence any action or decision that's before the legislature. Section 5, the prohibition on honorarium. Section 5 prohibits any member of the California Legislature from accepting any honorarium, and the legislature is required to enact laws to implement this prohibition. Also, the legislature is required to enact laws that ban or strictly limit the acceptance of a gift by legislators from any source if it might create a conflict of interest. And so members of the California Legislature are prohibited from knowingly accepting any compensation for appearing or agreeing to appear or taking any other sort of action on behalf of another person before a state government board or agency. If the member knowingly accepts any compensation for doing so before a local government board or agency, then the member is prohibited for a period of 1 year following the acceptance of that compensation from voting on or participating in making or in any way trying to use their position to influence an action or decision before the legislature. However, a member of the legislature, either an assembly member or senator, may engage in activities that involve a board or agency where they do so strictly on their own behalf, or where they appear in the capacity of an attorney before any court of law, or the Workers' Compensation Appeals Board, or of course, if they act as an advocate without compensation, or as you might expect, if the legislator makes an inquiry for information on behalf of a person before a board or agency to inquire basically on behalf of their constituents. Also, the legislature is required to enact laws that prohibit a member of the legislature from lobbying for compensation before the legislature for 12 months after leaving office. In addition, the California Government Code has several code sections that set forth a legislative code of ethics. So we just went through the constitutional provisions found in the California Constitution in sections 4 and 5 of Article 4. Now we're turning to the official legislative code of ethics, which is a series of statutes that were added in 1966. And they're found in Title II, Division 2, Part 1, Chapter 1, Article 2 of the California Government Code. So Government Code Section 8920 includes some prohibitions on legislators. For example, a member of the legislature or any elected or appointed officer or judge or justice is prohibited while they serve in that position to have any interest, financial or otherwise, direct or indirect, or engage in any business or transaction or professional activities that would be in substantial conflict with the proper discharge of their duties that are in the public interest. In addition, a member of the legislature is strictly prohibited from doing things like accepting other employment that might impair their independence or judgment, or induce them to disclose confidential information, etc. So there are a number of prohibitions. Now, despite these series of prohibitions, the Legislative Code of Ethics doesn't prohibit a legislator from acting as an attorney before a court or the Workers' Compensation Appeals Board and receiving compensation. That, of course, is also provided in Section 5 of Article 4 of our state constitution. And they're also not prohibited from acting as an advocate for no compensation, or of course making inquiries of state agencies or entities on behalf of any constituent. Also, a member of the legislature may not receive or agree to receive any compensation or reward or gift from any source except the state of California for any of the services they provide or for advice or assistance. A member of the legislature is prohibited from participating or by voting or any other means on the floor or in a committee or elsewhere in which he or she has a personal interest. There are a few specified circumstances in the government code. Next up is Section 8921 of the government code, which basically says if you're subject to this article and you have an interest that is in substantial conflict with the proper discharge of your duties, then, or if you have reason to believe that you might receive any direct monetary gain or suffer a loss, you cannot engage in that activity. The individual does not have an interest that is in substantial conflict with their proper discharge of duties. If any benefit or detriment accrues to that person as a member of a particular business or profession or occupation that's no greater than any other member of that business, profession, occupation, or group. Government Code Section 8922 deals with the proper discharge of duties and says that a person who's subject to the Legislative Code of Ethics is not engaged in an activity that's in substantial conflict with the proper discharge of their duties in certain specified instances, such as his or her relationship to any potential beneficiary that's a remote interest, or because of receipt of a campaign contribution. Of course, so long as that contribution is not made with any sort of understanding or agreement that would be in violation of the law or that would somehow influence the individual's vote or judgment or any official action by way of that contribution. Then there's Section 8924 dealing with some prohibitions on employees of the legislative branch. So this government code section says that an employee of either house of the legislature is prohibited during the time that he or she is employed from committing any act or engaging in any activity that's specifically prohibited by the Legislative Code of Ethics. And so these provisions are not just applicable to a member of the legislature, but they're also applicable to employees of the Assembly and Senate. Now, note that this prohibition does not extend to an employee of either house of the legislature from serving in an elective or appointed office of either a regional or a local public agency. The last item or two items are inducement and violations. Inducement is in Government Code Section 8925 that says no person can induce or seek to induce any member of the legislature to violate any provision of the Legislative Code of Ethics. And then Government Code Section 8926 at the conclusion says that every person who knowingly and willfully violates any provision of this act is guilty of a misdemeanor And any person who conspires to violate any provisions is actually guilty of a felony.